I guess with It Ends With Us, I had something similar going on. It wasn't helping me process anything about my life, but I was having to process my thoughts and feelings about this adaptation because I loved that book. I love Colleen. It was so important to me. So I will say where I've ended up now is that I do not think Lily was cast correctly.
Hey there, design enthusiast. Welcome to Inside the Design Studio, the podcast where we unravel threads of life and design. I'm your host, David Peck, your guide through the cosmic wonders, the tangible touches, and the delightful twists of creating a life you absolutely love. Today's episode is a special peek into my eclectic toolbox, the secret weapons I use to design a life that's as vibrant as my creations. So grab your metaphorical sketchpad and let's dive into the art of intentional living. I am so excited to welcome Laura Max Rose back into the design studio today because every time we talk, we just have so much to talk about. And I was so afraid that we would just talk about all the things. I actually made an outline this time because not that we have to stay on topic, Laura, but it is just so much fun to talk to you. But I really wanted to talk to you because this is something we talked about like months ago. So we just before we started recording, we're talking about astrology and like how the beginning of our year was. And so I think this was something we talked about back in like November, December, doing a podcast about. And so it is now almost May. And we are doing.
And here we are. And there's a reason for that, apparently. If anybody else feels like they made plans in November or December, and now it's a May and their year is finally starting to look like what they thought it was going to look like in November or December, apparently there's an astrological reason for that. Okay.
It is. So we're starting our year. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Today, Colleen Hoover, Laura Max Rose, is the resident expert. And
I love that. It's one of my favorite titles. Thank you.
Yeah, resident. That's what I'm going to put later. That should be on the screen.
Please, can that be my super resident Colleen Hoover expert?
Yes, for sure.
I would love that.
But there are so many book adaptations. So what the impetus for all this was back, I mean, this drama is still going on with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and it ends up with us because it never ended. But there are other Colleen Hoover books that are being adapted, and Laura has thoughts on thoughts, and
I have feelings
and
big
feelings on thoughts.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk about that, and we want to talk about adaptations in general. And there's some interesting ones coming up that are sort of like getting a lot of buzz and or controversial. Yeah. And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe some of our favorite adaptations and maybe which things we wish had never been adapted or want to see adapted. Yeah. So let's dive into the Colleen Hoover of it all. Yeah. So, and let's go back a little bit since, we were just talking about astrologically, all things retrograde. Let's go back a little bit to the Ends With Us thing. So I don't think in hindsight, now that you've had some distance from this, it's been released. It was a big hit. Like, I finally watched it. I enjoyed it. I did not read the book. So in terms of an adaptation, so not that because I know you enjoyed the movie, but being somebody who read the book and also watched the movie, how did you feel it overall worked as an adaptation?
Well, I've only seen it 6 times, David.
Only. So, like I said, you're a resident expert for a reason.
I've only seen it 6 times, and there's a reason for that. It's like I have to go back and like understand. I've seen the Mad Men series, for example, I think 7 times. So that means I've seen every episode of Mad Men 7 times, which is completely insane.
I love that.
It reminds me so much of my grandmother, and there's something about it that like helps me process my past or something. And I get something new from it every time, and I love it so much. And I guess with It Ends With Us, I had something similar going on. It wasn't helping me process anything about my life, but I was having to process my thoughts and feelings about this adaptation because I loved that book. I love Colleen. It was so important to me. So I will say where I've ended up now is that I do not think Lily was cast correctly. I think that's people are universally in agreement around that. I mean, she was completely almost the opposite of Lily in the book. Did that make it so I completely wrote her off and wouldn't go see the movie? Obviously not. I was willing to accept the movie for what it was, as being something different. And that's what it was. She brought something new to the character. This is totally controversial, and you're a fashion expert, so you can tell me all about what you think about this, but I actually loved her outfits. Like, I've said this on another podcast.
I thought it was very, like, they were stylish in a character-driven way. Like,
Yes.
I felt like I knew who she was because of her clothes.
Thank you. Exactly. And I loved it. And when, there's all this stuff coming up in the lawsuit about how much authority she took over her own wardrobe. And I feel really bad for her about stuff like that, because I feel like that actually is part of what makes her so special, is that she really does know what she wants.
Yeah.
And she really does say what that is. And she brings herself to the table in a really cool way. And I actually thought that the wardrobe was great. I just accepted her as being a different Lily. So I didn't mind any of that. But now that we have all of the drama and everything that has surrounded it, there's no doubt in anybody's mind that that has taken away from the essence of the film. I can't really watch it without seeing Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively instead of Ryle and Lily. I
Right.
think Ryle as Justin was actually almost perfectly done. I don't think that there was anything. He was the perfect person to play Ryle, and Colleen was the one who asked him to play Ryle. I mean, he was the perfect Ryle. I don't think that Atlas was cast. I think Atlas could have been cast correctly. I really like the actor that played Brendan Skenlar. I mean, the actor, I really like Brendan Skenlar, the actor that played Atlas, but I don't think that he played Atlas. I don't think Atlas was given a chance in that movie. The love story between Atlas and Lily is the entire point of that book. I mean, for the most part, it's not the entire point, but it's an amazing part of the book. And it just wasn't there. Like, there was no connection. They were friends. They seemed like friends. So anyway, to answer your question, what do I think now? Looking back on it, I think it was a good movie. And I think that It Ends With Us was a great book, and I think that they were very different. And I would love to see a remake in 10 years where we really get these characters as they were meant to be in the book, and we really get to see that love story. So I don't think it was a terrible movie at all. I think there's a reason why it was so popular. I was totally emotionally gripped by it, but I don't think it quite lines up with the essence of the book, and I would love to see a movie that does.
I think that's probably a very, having not read the book, I would agree with your take that they stand on their own 2 feet, but they're not necessarily, and they have a conversation with each other, but they're definitely not, it's not a word for word faithful adaptation, or even maybe in some ways a spirit.
Right. The
Uh,
spirit of the book is very different than the spirit of the movie, with the exception of the best friend, Jenny, whose name is escaping me right now.
Jenny Slate's character. Yeah.
Jenny Slate's character is, I mean, that was the most well acted thing I've seen all year, quite honestly. I want people like that to get awards when they do such a good job, which I think it might be where we're going, because I feel like the Oscars have totally overdone it in terms of only awarding things that are extremely eccentric and extremely ethereal. And what's ended up happening is that the work that we end up seeing and what we get to go see in theaters isn't really what the people want anymore.
Yeah.
And we're getting all these new adaptations and people love them. And I'm so excited about what's to come at the movies. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, and I think there's been, I mean, for the longest time, there were always like book people versus movie people. Now it's book people versus movie people and like TV show limited series, like all the adaptation
Yes,
possible.
yes,
And
absolutely.
there are people who are like book apologists and people who are movie apologists. Did you see the movie first? Did you see the book first? Or like, and for me, like, I think there are some times where I have read both and it's just sort of like I can divorce the two. And other times I feel like I've imagined them so much in my mind that when I see the movie, it's hard for me to connect. But I really do try to see them as separate things when I'm going into it, because I think when we have, it's like anything in life, when you have preconceived notions, you
Yes.
limit your ability to fully be present in the moment.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I feel like as a viewer, I'm like very open to being surprised or having these characters maybe look different than how I imagined them to some degree.
Right.
With a few exceptions, when an author like provides, there's this whole thing with Bookstagram right now where authors and fans will create artwork after their book has been released, showing the characters interacting. And I read a book recently, and somebody did like a fan artwork of the two main characters interacting, and the female main character looked absolutely nothing like she does in my mind, and I just hated it. I was like, this is not who she is. I don't like this at all. So I think it depends, but I think when it comes to the movies, I'm open to just seeing somebody else's interpretation of something I really love.
Okay, so since we're open-minded people, this is what we're telling ourselves. I'm so open-minded. Let's talk about the next Colleen one that's getting a very huge, if you will, amount of buzz is Verity.
Hmm.
And this cast has been announced, and it's Anne Hathaway, Dakota Johnson, and Josh Hartnett. So Verity, we've actually talked about on this podcast. You can go back and listen to that episode. It was a book that was not your favorite Colleen book. I think you enjoyed it, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
I
But
liked it. And I
yeah,
totally know why it was picked. I mean, I know it is so clearly the right choice for a remake.
yeah.
I mean, for a movie adaptation, 100%.
Yeah. So it's very creepy. So when I think we even talked about like who we would cast, and I don't even remember. I should have gone back to listen
I
to
said
find out.
something really funny about the woman who plays Lowen. It was the woman from American Pie, Natasha.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
why I saw her face, but let me just say I think Dakota Johnson is an epic, epic choice for that character. Not one I would have made, but I do think she's going to do a great job. That's my prediction. What do you think about Dakota?
I was very happy with the two female leads. I was like, I get Anne Hathaway. I think in my mind, I had imagined Verity being a little bit older. So she's on the younger side of what I imagined, but also I think it heightens the tension a little bit.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
I think is good. And I mean, Anne Hathaway is looking really amazing right now.
yeah,
There were
she is.
pictures of her in Fashion Week in New York, and she's just like the high ponytail and things. She just looks so cool. Anyway, so two female leads I was on board with. The Josh Hartnett thing really kind of surprised me. One, because we haven't seen him in a long time. So it's
We
either
haven't.
really brilliant because he was like the hot star, back in the day. So in a way, like he feels older, even though he's probably not that much older than I am. He, he feels
It's so weird with these stars like aging, and I'm like, wait a second, how old am I? What's going on right now? Why
yeah.
are we
So
old?
exactly. So I don't know. Like he's not. I don't picture him, and it'll be interesting to see how he looks in the movie because there aren't a lot of recent photos of him because he hasn't done a lot of work recently that I'm aware of. He doesn't look as suave or as like sexy maybe as I imagined is it Jeremy to be. That was just my thought on that. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
open-minded to see how it works, but it's just not who I think because Dakota Johnson's character in the book really idolizes him. And like
Mm.
her vision of him as a man
Yes.
is like he is a specimen of like perfection.
He is a
And
perfect
not that Josh Hartnett
specimen.
isn't,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I just am
Yeah.
yeah, and so I guess I haven't seen him. He looks too old to be the perfect specimen, if I'm being ageist and all the things
No,
about it.
it's okay. You know what? He looks exactly like Jeremy to me. I think I view him, I see what you're saying objectively, but I will always view him as like the Josh Hartnett that I had posters of on my camp wall in my cabin. Like,
Well, and maybe that's it. Maybe because I'm not that target demographic. I
you're
did
not.
not have pictures of Josh
I
Hartnett on
think
my wall.
for me, he fits the bill
You can still
completely. It
picture
was
him that way.
actually Anne Hathaway
Yeah.
is Verity described as a brunette in Verity? I cannot remember that because when I was reading it, she was 100% blonde. And I feel like one of the things that I noticed about Verity is that the women's features were not detailed. So we didn't really get a very good description of Lowen at any point compared to a lot of Colleen's other books. And she was kind of like up for interpretation. And with Anne Hathaway,
Yeah.
you would usually catch on to an actor's hair color. But with Anne Hathaway, I definitely didn't think Verity looked anything like Anne Hathaway when I was reading. I'm okay with the fact that Verity is Anne Hathaway now. But
Yeah.
perhaps something about the last name Crawford, I saw like a very tall, like model looking woman who was blonde. That was what I imagined as Verity and older. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I think I had imagined Verity as being blonde, but I think that's also because I imagined Kate Blanchett playing her. So
Right.
in my mind,
Similar type of actress though. Like
yeah.
I think that was what I was thinking. She was older. But again, I'm very open to it being Anne Hathaway. I'm excited to see what that's going to be like.
Yeah, I think it'll be really good. So there's a couple other Colleen books that are being adapted right now that you expressed some very strong thoughts and I can't wait to hear them. So it's Regretting You and Reminders of Him, neither of which, because I am not the Colleen apologist that you are, or super fan. I know nothing about these books, but apparently they're a big deal and they're being adapted. Did look to see if they had announced any of the casting, and the only Regretting You does have a cast. We
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
Allison Williams,
My
McKenna
favorite.
Grace, and
Yes.
Dave Franco. I think like Allison Williams is underrated. I
I think
mean,
she's the most beautiful. I'm obsessed with her. Like whenever I go get my hair done or something, like I'm like, just here's Allison Williams. I love her. I think she's amazing, totally underrated. I loved her as Marnie and Girls. I think that's an example of where the movie might end up being better than the book.
okay.
I really do. I have read all 24 of Colleen Hoover's books, as I've said so many times before. And in all the podcasts I've done, I have made it very clear that Regretting You is my least favorite of all of them. which is interesting because I couldn't put it down when I was reading it. I remember very specifically I was going on a date with my husband and I couldn't put the book down. And I'm like holding it and he's like, can you read that? And I'm like, I know this is so ridiculous, but like I actually have to finish this page. And then when I was done, I just was like, there were so many things about it that were so incredibly unrealistic. And I guess it's about a situation that obviously I didn't live through myself, but as a child, like I had sort of similar traumas to the character that not the character that Marnie is going to play. Allison Williams plays the mother, which is another moment of like, how effing old am I? What is going on? Because when I saw it, I'm like, oh, she's going to be the 16-year-old. No, she's the mom. She's my age. Movie. Oh my God, I have to see this as a movie. Please, somebody make this a movie. And like, Reminders of Him and Regretting You were two of the ones that I never had any desire to see as a movie. Not even a tiny little speck of want. So I'm like, are they going to keep making her books into movies? Please. So there's this book called Hopeless by Colleen Hoover. I talk about this every time. It's my favorite book by Colleen Hoover. If you go read the reviews, every person who has read all of her books like me is obsessed with Hopeless. Hopeless is the perfect movie. I'm just praying that they make Hopeless into a movie. Reminders of Him, I found to be extremely depressing. I didn't personally get a lot of joy out of reading it. She has other books that are darker, but I still enjoyed a lot more. It's a very popular book of hers. So I think as a director or producer, it's a great choice from the standpoint of a lot of people really like it. But I don't know. Not my favorite. Will I see it? 100%. It looks pretty well cast. Like when I was looking at the characters, I thought, oh, you're who I imagined. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I just don't want any of the producers out there to say, okay, we've turned 4 of her books into movies and we're done, because I need to see Hopeless. I have to see it in theaters. I want to see Too Late in theaters. So I'm still waiting.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when books are not as strong, and maybe it's because they hit first and that's what they, and it wasn't until later. I don't know the logistics because I know it takes a lot of time to get things adapted. Do you feel like maybe Colleen is more involved now after the whole It Ends With Us debacle, or like less involved, or distancing herself, or
Yeah.
like maybe really involved behind the scenes? Like, what is your take on?
I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I think she's actually less involved in some ways and more in others. It seemed like with casting, the way that she posted about the casting for Reminders of Him, she, I think, said that she was really proud of the director for making such a great casting choice. So it was really clear she had nothing to do with it. She seemed a lot more removed from it in that sense, but I can imagine that in other ways she might end up involving herself more because of what happened with It Ends With Us.
Yeah.
I was reading Dakota Johnson was talking about her experience filming 50 Shades of Grey, which I was reading about because I was so fascinated that she could do those movies. Like, they're just so vulnerable. And I'm like, just totally, I want to know more about how she did that. And I'm reading about it, and she said that working with E.L. James was just so challenging, that she loves the author of 50 Shades of Grey, but that she micromanaged every aspect of the project to the point where they would film every scene multiple times versus like how they wanted to do it and how she wanted to do it.
Right.
And that it was just sort of a nightmare, and that she doesn't know if she would have even signed up to do the movie if she knew filming it was going to be like that. I think Colleen is really the opposite. And when she talked about It Ends With Us, she just would always talk about how proud she was of everyone for putting a great movie together. I don't know if people remember this, but when It Ends With Us started filming and there were photos being taken, she was already getting heavily criticized because they didn't like Lily. They didn't like Lily's outfits. And she would come out and say, please give these people a chance. They've worked so hard. Their movie is so great. I feel like she's taking a similar approach, but I also think she's distancing herself even more in some ways, because I think that what happened to her seems like it was pretty traumatic. I mean, she seems pretty traumatized to me, and I think to a lot of others as well, which breaks my heart.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see with how long the Ends With Us fallout continues, and if it will impact these other movie and adaptations. Like if the residual effects are going to have an effect, or if it's just going to be, people kind of separate them and take them on their own merit. Because I will say, like,
Yeah.
I didn't realize what a big deal Colleen Hoover was as an author until I heard about the movie. And so, like,
Yeah.
I came to Colleen Hoover because of the movie being done, not vice versa, where you were excited about the film because of the book.
Right. Right. Well, we haven't even really talked, David, about what your thoughts are on the It Ends With Us drama. We could easily accidentally turn the entire episode into this, but just in a few sentences, what do you think now with
Now
everything
that
where it is about what's going on?
I think people are complicated.
Yeah.
I think women are more easily demonized than men. I think that Justin Baldoni strikes me as a performative feminist.
Yes.
And I think people can do good things for the wrong motivation. And I think sometimes people can do bad things for the right motivation. And I think
Yeah.
a combination of all those things happened on this movie. And the truth is probably not as interesting as they're making it out to be. I think it probably was a conflict of personalities, and one person didn't like how it was handled. The other person wanted to take control or take control back. And I think it became a fight of egos. I think both of them have pretty strong senses of self and brand, and they didn't want to let it go. And so I think it left a big mess. I I think my tendency is to always to default and believe women um, more than men, because I just think this is my own bias showing that men can have historically tended to be a lot more creepy and predatory than women. That doesn't mean women cannot act in behave in ways that
Yeah.
are untoward.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think that Blake has not. Here's what I will say: no matter what happened on the set, I think the fallout and what Blake has done in response has been ill-advised. And so whether
Yeah.
that was her team or her taking the lead, I don't know. But I think that all of it could have been mitigated and handled a little bit better than it was.
Yeah, 100%. I love your response. I totally agree with a lot of what you said. I think that he did, from reading what she has said and reading her text to her friends about him when she was on the set, I think she was creeped out by him. And I think that her feelings are okay, but I don't think the facts support her feelings. And I've been her, I mean, I've been creeped out by people before, but that doesn't mean that I can sue them for sexual harassment and win in a court of law. And I don't
Exactly.
think that the facts line up. And I think she tried to say that they did. And I think it was a really bad move. And I feel very badly for her that she has
Yeah.
been so pummeled in the public eye, because I don't think that she's all bad. I do think she did something that she shouldn't have done. Um, but I don't think he's the be all end all either. And I think people put themselves in a camp, and it's like, well, he doesn't have to. I mean, it's a really sticky situation. And I don't know. I think people are complicated. I always wish that we had more room for that in
Yeah.
our society.
We don't have room for nuanced conversations. And I think
We
that's
don't.
hard. And it's very easy to just vilify somebody in the press. I think it was a very easy thing to latch on to
Yeah.
in and so it kind of got out of control. And I do get the sense that maybe that Blake and her team have tried to dial it back, and like even some of the motions to keep things like private, like in terms of discovery. But it's almost like the cat's out of the bag, and it's going to be really hard to. I don't think I think she can recover from it, but it's going to take some time.
It's going to take some time. I do too, actually. I think she can recover from it. I wonder what a trial would or will look like. I think it's a very interesting choice that either one of them would want that. Well, it makes sense that he would, but I keep thinking like she's going to have something really big that would come out in a trial, and that somehow people would empathize with her more. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah,
remains to be seen. We'll have to do another
yeah.
episode.
We'll have to do another episode
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay, so moving on to some of these other buzzy projects. So one of the ones that I'm most interested about is Wuthering Heights, because it's a book that I don't know. You haven't read it, I don't think.
Well, what's funny, David, is that when I was a kid, so my mom thinks I've read it because I bought like multiple versions of Wuthering Heights because I thought the cover was so beautiful. And I would just sort of collect books, but I wouldn't read them. So I have not read it. I'm ashamed to say that. But tell me your thoughts. Tell me your thoughts about the remake. I know Margot Robbie has been a controversial choice.
Yes,
Tell me what you
I
think.
there's a lot of controversial opinions, and I will say, so of the Bronte sisters, Wuthering Heights was not my favorite. I was obsessed with Jane Eyre. I really loved Jane Eyre. And there have been multiple adaptations of that book as well. So I'm interested to see Wuthering Heights because it wasn't the book that I connected to the most. And at first, when they announced Margot Robbie, I was like, oh, okay. But not really, because I hadn't studied the book. I hadn't realized, like, oh, she's like double the age of the character in the book. And then the whole thing with Heathcliff being, perhaps not British and definitely not white, and like all of these things. So I was like, okay, this is really interesting. But I do love Emerald Fennell as a director and the idea of it. And the stills I have seen, or the clips that I have seen from the filming, they're not historically accurate costumes, which tells me, and not in just that they're in the wrong time period, but they are not accurate for any time period. So there's a mix of genre, which makes me think that there must be some other take on Wuthering Heights that Emerald is doing beyond just a straight up literary adaptation. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
if it's going to be have a bit of fantasy to it, and I don't mean fantasy as in like the genre, but like there's dreamscapes, because Wuthering Heights, the book, was actually set at the end of the 1700s, so the late 18th century. Whereas like the stills that have come out of Margot Robbie in a wedding dress, it's very like Victorian-esque, but not actually period Victorian. And then her like wedding bouquet is like very strangely like 1980s.
Interesting.
And so it's
Interesting.
weird. And then there was a photo that I just saw of Jacob Elordi, and he has a gold tooth. So there's
Wow.
something going on here that I don't know. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm actually very excited to see it, because I'm excited to see somebody do something different with it and what they're trying to say. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
When does it
don't
come
think
out?
it. I don't think it's. I think it's supposed to be out next February,
Okay.
February of 26. So we have almost a year. But considering
I
how
have
quickly
time.
this
I
year
have
went,
time to finally read it.
yeah, one of your many versions of Wuthering Heights,
I
you
will
you can you
somewhere.
can read it.
Yes. Yes.
So I think it'll be interesting, and also, yeah, I don't know necessarily the other actors, but it does seem to be. I mean, it's definitely in the news, and the fact that something as classic literature is getting this much buzz tells me that there hopefully is something really interesting about it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so there's one I want to touch on briefly, because I'm really interested in it, because I was not allowed to read Judy Blume growing up. So
Really?
I was not allowed. She was controversial. That's a whole other podcast.
A
I have
whole other
since
podcast.
come to love the Judy Blume that I have read with my kids. I just think that she's fantastic. So Forever is a seminal and very pivotal book for so many people. And they have Regina King is directing, which is so cool. I love Regina King. And it's reimagined as a modern Black teen romance set in 2018 Los Angeles. So definitely not the
Wow.
1980s that Judy
Yeah.
Blume wrote this in. So I'm really interested to see this take, because I think it will give a different perspective on such a classic book.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It sounds really interesting. And what's funny about Judy Blume is an author actually recently wrote a book about like growing up with Judy Blume, and that author actually reached out to me to be on my podcast, and she just
Oh,
followed up like right before this, and I'm like, you know what? That's a sign I should probably talk to her. I was not a huge Judy Blume reader as a kid, but I'm curious to know. I mean, you read them to your children. I'm wondering if my kids would like Judy Blume. I have had a hard time finding books that my children really love, and they watch me read and they see how much I love it. And I think my oldest is like trying to figure out how to make that happen. But
right.
like she hasn't found that series yet. Like I used to read R.L. Stine when I was her age and have like the shit scared out of myself and loved it. Which is why as an adult I got really into Dateline probably, but I loved it. And I think it would scare the hell out of her. I mean, I don't even think she has any contact. I mean, I can't believe I was reading that stuff when I was that young, but I don't know. I'm still looking for like a really great series for my kids. So I love that you read Judy Blume to yours. I might try
Yeah,
that.
we always have an audiobook going. And so we listen to all the Ramona Quimby books, the Henry Huggins books. They loved Fudge, the Super
Okay.
Fudge, like all
Very
of
cool.
those, like, because they're just very kind of, slapstick, and they're,
Yeah.
kids being kids. And, she really has an amazing way of getting into a child's point of view. Like, it's not an adult writing about children. You really do feel the characters. And I think that's why my children loved them
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so much, and I want them, like, there's other books that she wrote more for like young adults, and I want to make sure that they're exposed to those as well. We've moved on to other things. Like my oldest son is really into Percy Jackson right now, loves Percy Jackson.
Very cool.
uh so and we did the whole Harry Potter thing. We've been there. My younger son is a little bit more reticent to take on some of the, like, those, like, more fanciful or magical type stories. So I think that's why, like, the Judy Blume types of things are grounded in reality and people that are really fun. Like, he just thinks Fudge is hilarious. He just
Awesome. Okay. Fudge.
yeah,
I'm going to have to check that out for my
yeah.
oldest.
And there's one of, I can't remember what it's called, but there is one that's written from their neighbor, the girl's point of view. So there is, because
Okay.
since you have girls, like, maybe that would
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
good one. Okay, so moving on to more adaptations, The Housemaid.
Ooh.
I have not read this one. So it's by Freida McFadden,
Oh, David. Yes. Have you read any
and
Freida McFadden?
I have not.
Okay.
So
Housemaid
tell
is the
me.
only book of hers that I've read, but I'll tell you, I almost read the entire thing in a 3.5 hour flight. I mean, I
Okay.
was completely engrossed. I could not, I couldn't breathe until this book was resolved.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, an incredible thriller, mystery, plot twist. I'm not shocked at all that it was turned into a movie. I am so curious to see it. I think Brendan Scanlar as the husband is almost a perfect match, literally exactly what I imagined when I was reading it. I
Hmm.
think Amanda Seyfried is going to do an incredible job playing the woman who is essentially the villain throughout a large part of the story. And I also think that Sydney Sweeney is a great pick for the character that she's playing. I think it's phenomenally cast, and I'm really excited to see it. People are going to love it whether or not they've read the book, but that book has really been a phenomenon. Freida McFadden has been a phenomenon. It's the only book of hers that I have read, because even though this is something that happens for me with books, like even though I couldn't put it down and even though the twist was insane, it still wasn't like a happy story, David. So
Yeah.
I really don't want to read another one. I'm not interested in reading another one. But it was an amazing journey to go on. I'm glad I did. I have a friend who reads her books all the time. She calls them palate cleansers because she reads them like between reading other like sort of longer, deeper books. But I'm very excited to see The Housemaid. I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
There was something about it, and I don't know that you've read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but the casting gave me those types of vibes. Maybe I'm completely off. I don't know.
The casting gave you Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo vibes. I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
read it. I haven't read any Taylor Jenkins Reid. I Everybody who tells me to read a book by Taylor Jenkins Reid wants me to read a different book of hers. Nobody can agree on which one's the best one. And there are some people who love like Malibu Rising, and then people who are like, it's the worst book I've ever read. I don't want to waste my time. So I have like a thing about that.
Yeah.
What is the book of hers that you think I should read if I were to read one?
Well, I've only read one. I've read The Seven Husbands.
And you loved it.
I did not love it. Hot take.
Interesting.
I did not love it.
Really? This is what
I
happens. It's like
Yeah.
so many people's favorite book, and then you don't like it. I'm like, I don't have time for this.
No. Here's the thing, what I felt about it. I felt like it was an excellent screenplay.
Ah,
Or actually in a screenplay for a limited series. I don't think it's a movie. I think it's too much to tackle in a movie. I think it's an excellent limited series, maybe 7 parts.
7 parts. Yeah. Yeah.
But I could very much see how the characters were written, and it's very cinematic. I felt the same way. This is really dating me, and years ago when I read the Da Vinci Code, I hated the Da Vinci Code
Yeah.
with a passion. But I was like, this is going to be an amazing movie, because the book was written like everything was a cliffhanger and a page turner. It was like, it
Yeah.
was written as if it was going to, what is coming next. And so I felt like Seven Husbands, the characters I'm fascinated by. I'm really interested. I think the idea of it is so good. I think it's going to make an amazing series, and I can't wait to see it. I just did not like it as a book.
Okay. That's another take. I
Yeah.
have never read an author that has like created so many different kinds of opinions, but the general consensus is obviously that she's a great author because she's a very popular and well-read author.
I mean, I think she's obviously very talented because she's been able to create these characters in this book that people can't stop talking about. So whether or not I like it is sort of irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah.
the book wasn't for me. However, I think the character she created, I'm super excited about. And I think the adaptation, when it happens, because it is in the works, is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of another author that people can't get enough of, apparently, and like Colleen Hoover, has many adaptations coming up, is Emily Henry. And the
Oh,
big buzzy one right now is People We Met on Vacation.
yes.
And the cast is Tom Blythe, who was in The Hunger Games, the latest one, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And there's another rising star, Emily Bader, who's in it. So it's buzzing because Henry's rom-com universe is officially a cinematic franchise in the making, and fans are very protective of these books. And there's been a lot of really strong reactions online. So do you
Interesting.
think that she can dethrone Hoover as, I wouldn't call it rom-com, but the queen of the screen?
No, they write completely different types of books, and there are Emily Henry fans, and they're not the same as Colleen Hoover fans. And I feel like people who love Emily Henry are obsessed with Emily Henry, but it does feel like a smaller number of people to me than like the way Colleen Hoover's books have just gone viral. It seems more explosive. But here, Emily Henry is in Bookstagram, in the Bookstagram universe that I am now a huge part of, David. It's like my whole discovery feed, me feed. I'm like, they're like, oh, you only want to see this, so we'll only show you this. It's all books. There are people who are just completely obsessed with her, and then people who don't care for her that much at all. I have only read one of her books. I read Funny Story, and this is the Taylor Jenkins Reid problem. Funny Story was touted to me as being the best of all of her books. It's the most recent one she's come out with until a couple days ago she came out with My Great Big Beautiful Life. I read Funny Story because I was like, I'm going to read an Emily Henry. Let me read the best one. People are completely obsessed with this book. I don't get it, David. I'm not super critical. I mean, a lot of people would tell me that a lot of what I read is quote unquote lowbrow, certainly not all of it, but I'm not over here like giving you a New York Times book review for a book that's just supposed to be a really happy rom-com. I
Right.
didn't think it was nearly as good as so many of the other books that I've read. It did not make me want to read another book by her, but other books by her have been pushed in my face so much that I have purchased some other ones that I haven't read yet. They're like sitting on my Kindle app. I will see a review of Emily Henry books that puts The People We Meet on Vacation as number 1 out of the 5 books that she's published. And in the same day, this literally happened yesterday, I see it as number 5. So it's either everyone's favorite or it's everyone's least favorite. It is never in the middle. Um, I think that, I think her books, just like you said about the Evelyn Hugo thing, when I think about Funny Story, I think that has the potential to be an incredible movie. And I
Yeah.
think her books are going to do really, really well at the box office and maybe be a little bit more of a stable experience than what we've experienced with Colleen Hoover's books. But I think yeah, I mean, I don't, because I don't think that they have like her fans don't have like the rabid nature of Colleen Hoover's fans either,
Right.
where like I don't know. But she fascinates me. I think she's like a wonderful person. She's a really cool like backstory. She writes really well. I just haven't found the Emily Henry book that I love so much, and I hope I do. I want to read her newest one, but given that all of her books are being adapted, I'm absolutely going to read them before I see the movies. I mean, they're literally all being turned into movies.
Yeah, they're very interesting. So there's Book Lovers, with a screenplay by Sarah Hayward, which, speaking of girls, she's from that whole genre.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yes, yes.
and then we've got Beach Read being directed by Yulin Kwong, and then Happy Place, which is going to be a Netflix series, and that's being produced by Jennifer Lopez, which is
Yes.
very interesting. And then Funny Story is actually being adapted by Henry herself. So maybe that whole idea of like she had always imagined it as a screenplay is
She's
true,
the
and
one
like,
writing the screenplay for it. I
yeah.
know. I saw that yesterday. And I thought the Jennifer Lopez adaptation was interesting too, because Happy Place is very often the one that I hear as being people's least favorite, but sometimes it's people's first. So who knows? But those are books that because they're being turned into movies, I will read them.
Yeah, so another one, not Emily Henry, author Carly Fortune is has written Every Summer After, which Amazon apparently has picked up, and it's being turned into a series called Every Year After. I'm not really sure why they needed to change the title to
Me
something
neither.
so
Um,
close.
Me neither. Me neither. My favorite summer romance of all time. I just like will drop everything for that book. I love that
Aw,
book so much. I cannot wait. I will literally cancel everything to
to
watch this
go
series.
that's a hearty endorsement. So the showrunner is Layla Gerstein, who is known for Heart of Dixie. So if that's kind of, I don't know, maybe she's giving it that kind of vibe. She's
Maybe.
serving as the showrunner, executive producer, and she's also adapting it. But they have not yet announced the cast, so that's to be determined.
That is a cast I will probably have feelings about. Like it, I really hope that the actors and actresses look like they did in the book because I love that book so much. But we'll see.
Uh,
I'm going to see it either way.
and for your sake, I hope so too. So another big author that I feel like everybody talks about, and I did not know of this book. I knew of Rebecca Yarros because of The Fourth Wing. Like I feel like I've seen so many people on Instagram reading The Fourth Wing. But In the Likely Event is being
Oof.
done on Netflix. It's being
Ah,
adapted by Lindsay Ferrantino, but there is no cast yet announced. Thoughts?
I can't wait. I just like I read that book and I'm like, I need to see the movie right now. I love In the Likely Event. In my Rebecca Yarros sort of pantheon, The Things We Leave Unfinished is my favorite book by her, and I have not read The Fourth Wing, but my second favorite is In the Likely Event, and it is such a great book, and I cannot, it is such movie material. It takes place in I mean half of it is in Afghanistan. It is so good, and I cannot wait to see the movie. I'm just so excited that these books are being turned into movies, that we are finally catching on to what the people want to see, and that I've read these books that I get to see. I mean, I'm so excited about this one. I don't think this is obviously not going to be the last time Rebecca Yarros's book is going to be turned into a movie. I cannot wait to see who adapts The Fourth Wing and the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which people have been talking about lately.
Yeah.
All of her books I've read. I'm just like, I have to see the movie, so I can't wait to see this one.
Yeah, I feel like it might be like we're in a golden age of book to movie or series
Yeah.
adaptations.
We're
It's
in a
sort
golden
of
age
like,
of reading too. I mean, I joke that I picked up reading at 35 and I've read 100 books since then, and I'm 36. I'm not alone. I mean, I think like I have a whole theory about how like the algorithms have kind of picked up on what people want to read, and so have authors, and books are better now and we want to read more of them.
yeah. So there's so many new things coming out, but I do want to touch briefly on some of at least my favorite um,
Please.
movie adaptations or book adaptations to movies or shows. So one of my favorite films of all times is The Talented Mr. Ripley. Like it has
Ugh,
stayed in the
so
top
good.
three of my top three
Epic
films
movie.
since it came out.
And you read the book
Um,
before you saw the movie?
I read the book after because I loved the
Wow.
movie. I had never heard of The Talented Mr. Ripley. I frankly watched The Talented Mr. Ripley because Gwyneth Paltrow was in it.
And she was
I was
incredible and just stunning in that movie. So good.
everything about that movie is perfection. The way it looks, the
Uh-huh.
cast, the cast
Own it.
was absolutely perfect. I don't think Matt Damon has been better. This may be a hot take in a
No, ever.
movie since
100%
that
agree with you.
movie.
Ever.
He
Yeah.
was so good. Jude Law was he like rode the line between being like, I understand why everyone's in love with you, and also you are the biggest dick ever.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of dicks in in Mr. Ripley.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, Dickie. Uh yeah, it was just so good. And then Philip Seymour Hoffman, like the cast is just stacked. The cinematography is absolutely stunning. The costumes, like every layer to the film is just so good. My favorite version of My Funny Valentine, as sung by Matt Damon, is in that movie. It's just so good. And so when I read the book, I was not disappointed. The book was, I remember it being different because it's more fully fleshed out in some ways. Like the movie is sort
Yeah.
of like a painting of it. You know, it's like it doesn't have all the details, but I thought it captured the essence of it so clearly, and it made me read more Patricia Highsmith. So, I love that movie. And I am so sad, and I think part of the reason why I've held off on watching it is I have not yet watched the new Netflix series with Andrew Scott and Dakota Fanning, because I think I love the original so much. I know I'm going to love the new one, but I don't know. That's held me back subconsciously, I think.
Yeah, I can't. I'm right there with you. I don't. I think I feel the exact same way. It was absolutely it was a perfect movie. I cannot think of one thing about that movie I would change. I did not read the book, but I don't see any reason to see a different version of it. Although who knows, it could be good. But I feel
I've
the
heard
same
it's
way as you.
amazing, and they did a completely different take on it. So I'm
Okay.
glad that they did not try to just like do a shot for shot like remake,
Yeah.
which has happened in the past, but they did not.
Yeah.
Okay, so there have been in the past, and I feel like every time there's a Jane Austen adaptation, I love Jane Austen as an author. I don't know if you've read her as much as I have. I've read all of her books. I've been fascinated by her life. I just think she was a feminist before feminism. Like
Yeah.
I love her
Absolutely.
so much. Her insights into the human condition and character, especially in a certain class level. Like, I don't think she speaks to every class, but I think, and I just am like, I was never a Francophile, but I was an Anglophile, I guess. So there's been the very famous Pride and Prejudice adaptations, but there is a new one coming out with Emma Corrin, famously from The Crown as Diana, as playing Elizabeth Bennet, Jack Lowden as Mr. Darcy, and Olivia Colman, everyone's favorite queen, as Mrs. Bennet, which I think it's going to be very interesting. It's interesting that Pride and Prejudice, strangely not my favorite Austen book, not that I don't like it, it's just not my favorite, gets remade so many times. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, people are obsessed with the Keira Knightley version of Pride
Yeah.
and Prejudice, which I haven't seen.
It's so good.
I know.
So,
I know. Everyone's obsessed with
shockingly,
it.
I like it better than the Colin Firth version. I know that's a hot take, but like,
No, it's not a hot take, actually. I think people really love that version so much. I think it's obviously a story that really resonates with people, and it's not something, I mean, I guess I'm trying to, like, Batman, okay? How many times have we seen the Batman movie,
yeah,
right?
true.
Or different versions of it. And I think that these books just they're timeless. I mean, they don't lose, and when we remake them, we can make it so they resonate more with the people of the time that are watching it. And I think that that's why we've seen so many Pride and Prejudice remakes. But I think it has such a soft spot in the heart of so many people. And even if you haven't read it, you can watch it and just you're there. So
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, my favorite, uh, not only Jane Austen book, but Jane Austen movie is Sense and Sensibility. I think it's
That
because
was, I think, my mom's. I watched that when I was a kid with my mom. She loved it.
it is my absolute favorite. It's where I discovered Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet. I just thought they were the best thing I'd ever seen. I fell in love with Kate Winslet. Actually, the whole reason I went to see Titanic, that's a whole other story for another
Was because of
podcast,
Kate Winslet.
was because of Kate Winslet. I didn't know who James Cameron was. I had no idea. I was just like,
Yeah,
Kate Winslet's going to be in this movie about the Titanic. I really
let's
want to see
go
it.
see it.
I just thought she was stunning. And the wit, I think, because Eleanor is such a Capricorn. She's either Capricorn or Virgo. I think she's a Capricorn. I identified so much with Eleanor. But strangely, it's just, there have been other like BBC adaptations, but there has not really been another like big movie production. And I was fascinated by the fact that Emma Thompson wrote the screenplay, and like she wrote a book actually about writing the screenplay, and it's so good. Her process, and it's also Ang Lee's like first English speaking film, which, I mean, who adapts like
Yeah,
Jane Austen as your first, English language
it's
film?
incredible. Yeah,
It's
I
so
didn't even
cool.
know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So Emma is another one that has gotten several adaptations, and I will say, I'm as a Gwyneth Paltrow stan for life, like her version of Emma is absolutely perfection to me. Jeremy Northam as what's his name? Drawing a blank. Perfect. And I also loved Anya Taylor-Joy in the more recent, I guess, adaptation. I thought that was really great. But then there's also Clueless, which is essentially, Emma without being.
That's the version of Emma that I've seen.
I was not allowed to watch that version and I
Oh
did
my
not know until
God.
like much later in my life that it was an adaptation of Emma. Um, but it's interesting because there was also another, we didn't touch on it, but with Pride and Prejudice, Fire Island, which came out a couple years ago, was sort of like a modern queer Pride and Prejudice. And I hadn't seen that one, but it's interesting that somebody like Jane Austen is able to continue to inspire people so many years later. Like for,
Yeah,
somebody who did not follow conventional norms in her own period of
right.
time. Like
She like fit into a different time.
yeah, and I think it just gives me hope maybe that maybe some way my work will live on someday.
I believe it, David. I do. I love your work. I
Oh,
hope
thank
it
you.
does.
And then another like timeless one that I love, and I will say I loved both of the most recent adaptations of Little Women. So like I grew up watching, and this was very much around the same time as Sense and Sensibility, watching the Winona Ryder Little Women. Like
Yeah, I saw that as well. Long time ago. Yeah.
tears,
Yeah.
ball. Like I read the book, like I had read the book before I watched the movie. When Beth dies, spoiler alert, I lose it every single
Yeah.
time. Like
Yeah.
I read all of Louisa May Alcott. Like I was fascinated by her. And then Greta Gerwig's most recent adaptation, I just thought was such a it was it built on the legacy of that original one,
Yeah.
with Winona Ryder. So and that movie, I mean, not only Winona Ryder, she was already a star, but Kristen Dunst, Susan Sarandon was in it.
Oh my
Like,
God, I didn't even remember
yeah,
that.
Christian Bale. Like it was a
Wow.
stacked cast. I mean, they weren't all who they were now.
Now, yeah, yeah. Isn't that amazing? I love seeing movies like that.
Yeah. So those are some of mine. Like, what are your in terms of like film? I know you're a more recent reader, so it could be that some of these,
I am
but
a
like
much more recent reader. What are the books that I want to see made into movies? Is that the
yeah,
question?
or your favorite of all time, like
Oh,
like maybe one of each. Like, what is like a movie that is just stuck with you that is an adaptation, and maybe you've read the book and maybe you haven't, and then what book would you just love to see being made into a movie?
oh, I'm gonna have to think about the first one, which is what book adaptation have I seen that has always stuck with me? Because I know I have. I mean, The Notebook, David, obviously. That's it. That's the answer. The answer is The Notebook. No, I have a better answer.
Which has now
Um,
been adapted into a musical, like Broadway. It's
really,
yeah, it's like
that is interesting.
yeah,
Huh. I don't.
very.
I have to think about. I have a really good answer to that question. I just have to figure out what it is. I'm pretty sure, like, my husband gives me so much shit for this in a loving way. My favorite movie ever is The Man in the Iron Mask. Did you ever see it?
It's strangely because that was like the same era as like Sense and Sensibility. Okay, so this is
Yep.
just this will give you an insight into the other podcast that we will someday have about like what I was allowed to watch and not watch. But that one was rated PG-13, and so I was not allowed to watch that.
You were not allowed to see it. We're gonna have to do like a whole David, what David wasn't allowed to watch as a kid
Yeah.
episode. That's next.
But I know that it's a like one of those movies that people just absolutely loved, and I remember seeing the trailer. Like vividly remember
Do
seeing the
you
trailer.
remember that, David? Because I, well, you're gonna have to tell Ben. I'm like, this was a phenomenon. Okay, I've
It
seen it.
was.
So, but it only gets better as I get older. I mean, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio, who's like my husband's favorite actor, and his favorite movie is The Departed, and he's like, how can this is insane that this is your favorite movie, but it really is. It's another movie I could watch 1,000 times and just find something new every time I watch it. I absolutely love it, and it was definitely a book adaptation. I remember buying the very thick book that the year that I saw it, and trying to read it. I was very young, so I didn't end up reading it. But I mean, that's probably gonna be up there as number one. What would I like to see turned into a movie? The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. There is absolutely no. I mean, I don't know how that book cannot become a movie. Like, I feel like that book will just turn itself into a movie. It is the best. It was the best book I read last year. I have recommended it to so many people. It is a historical fiction sort of mystery love story. It has present day and the past. It's visceral. It has an incredible twist. It's the perfect movie. And when you're reading it, you feel like you're watching it as a movie. I know it's going to turn into a movie and I can't wait to see it. And everyone I've told to read this book is like, wait a second, what? That was the best thing I've ever read. So
Okay, I'm gonna have to
I
read
can't
this.
wait. Yes, it's so good.
Oh,
It's so good.
perf.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what book should never have been adapted? Have you watched a movie and you're like, why did they do that?
Oh, that's a really good question. Like, why are we turning this into a movie? I have to say, generally speaking, I am a little bit confused with the books that get turned into movies up until this point. I sometimes feel like we pick really safe books,
Mm-hmm.
unless we're talking about historical books or older books or classic books. Um, I feel like we pick safe books that are like easy, but they're not like as meaningful. And I've
Yeah.
often found myself feeling that way, but I can't think of like which book specifically has made me feel that way. Do you have one that like you were like, why are we turning this into a movie?
I think there's ones that I've thought in like hindsight where I'm like, I think because my perspective on the world has changed, like The Blind Side kind of, I mean, like I
Uh-huh.
love Sandra Bullock, but like it was very much like a white savior movie. And like
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I loved it and cried at the time. And now I'm like,
Can you imagine that movie coming out today?
no.
Like, it's so
Absolutely
funny
not.
because it wasn't that long ago, but it would just be like so glaring. Oh, The Help was an probably. I mean, like, I know
Yeah.
it's it's one of my favorite movies. I'm not like ashamed to say that because I've talked to so many people about this, and I just think it was an incredible movie. I mean, I'm not like
That is one that I read the book and I watched it, and I think I understood that it was problematic and still enjoyed it.
well,
So
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way. I think it's a complicated thing, and I also um how do I say this? I'm just gonna say I grew up with a lot. My mom, I always had a nanny, and like when I was little, I had one for a very long time, and I
yeah,
had a very close relationship with that nanny, and like then we moved away, and I never saw her again, and like the whole thing of Constantine like sort of disappearing.
yeah,
I cried for like 3 days after I saw that. I mean, I couldn't stop crying. It was insane. My best friend in college saw it with me, and we sat on a bench outside, and I just laid in her lap and cried. I could not stop crying. And I read the
oh,
book. It was just like I felt it in my soul. I also, my grandma was like basically from there. I mean, she was in Houston, but different than Jackson,
yeah,
definitely different than Jackson. But like historically speaking, there are a lot of things
similar.
about that are very accurate. And I think it was like the Mad Men thing for me, just like reliving this. And like my grandma used to have people over for like mahjong and deviled eggs and whatever that thing is called that tastes really disgusting, ambrosia. Like there was something about that like I was like, oh, it was kind of endearing. So yeah, I mean, and I also read the book and thought it was fantastic. So that's a controversial one. But yeah, any other ones that you were like, wait, why did we turn this into a movie besides The Blind Side?
I mean, I think also when I actually saw the movie of the Da Vinci Code, I was like, oh, I actually thought it was going to be a better movie than it was.
Right. Yeah. I never read the book, but I don't remember the movie. I mean, the movie did not stick with me.
It did not, and I was surprised that it got sequels. So I was like, wait, really? We're doing that?
Like,
Really? That's
like
what we're
what is
spending money
this?
on. Yeah. I was also going through a phase where wasn't a big Tom Hanks fan. Not because he's a bad actor or a bad person at all. There was just something grating, but now I can
Yeah,
appreciate him. I think
interesting.
he seems like a lovely person. He wasn't my favorite at the time.
He
So
wasn't your favorite at the time. Yeah.
yeah. So what are you reading now, and that maybe might get turned into something someday?
Oh, well, I'm so excited about what I just read because I'm interviewing the author tomorrow. I just
Oh, I
finished
saw this
my
on your Instagram. Yes.
I'm so freaking excited, David. I just finished this book called Promise Me Sunshine. It is like in the Bookstagram world, everyone is just obsessed with this book. It's in everybody's like top 10 for 2025. If you read the reviews, everyone's like, this is the best book I've ever read. I'm so obsessed. I could not put this book down. I was completely engrossed. It was a gorgeous, beautiful story about grief and love, and it was visceral and honestly perfectly written, like the way The Talented Mr. Ripley was the perfect movie. This was the perfect book. And I reached out to the author, and she's coming on my show. So I'm so, so excited to talk to her. I just finished that book, and it was so good. David, I usually like will literally close one book and open another. Like I don't even pause. I'm on my Kindle. I'm like, bye, hello. I don't want to sit there in between for very long.
Yeah.
I haven't read another book. It's been like a week because I'm not ready to say goodbye. This one was so good. I actually tried to start 2 other books and I couldn't get into them because this one was so good. So if you haven't read Promise Me Sunshine yet by Kara Barstone, it was phenomenal. And you can hear from her on my podcast soon. I'm so
I can't.
excited.
I'm gonna read it because you recommended it, and I'm gonna listen to your
Yay.
podcast, and I'll
I'm
link
so
it down in the
excited.
show notes too, so that people can do that. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so much for joining me. This is always so much fun.
I
So we're
love
gonna have
talking
to.
to you.
Yeah, it's likewise. It's really a blast, and I feel like we could just talk about so many things forever. We will. I mean, if you want, we will someday do a podcast on all the things I didn't watch because I wasn't allowed to watch, and then
I would
some
love
of
to do
them.
that because I have the same kind of what's funny about my childhood, David, is it was almost the exact opposite. I was an only child. I watched everything with my parents. And when I got into 4th grade and everyone was like, hey, have you seen Recess? Do you watch Nick at Night? I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
So I was like totally left out of the cartoon universe
Oh, I
for
wasn't allowed to
Melrose
watch
Place.
any of
Yeah.
that. Oh no, I didn't watch Melrose. I mean, I knew what it was, but like I didn't watch anything.
Oh, you can
I
ask
basically
Lisa. Yep.
yeah, I'll ask
I
I'm gonna
watched
ask
it.
you I'm
I
gonna
was
ask Lisa about
fascinated. What is this? Why are they fighting? Yep. Ally McBeal. I loved Ally McBeal. I think about my kid, like she watches iCarly, which I watch iCarly over her shoulder, and I'm like, I don't know if I
yeah.
like this. It's like a Nickelodeon show. It's
Yeah.
silly. It's cute and happy and fun. I'm
I
still like,
watched,
what is this?
people say they didn't watch age appropriate things. I didn't watch things that were age appropriate because I was watching like every movie from 1930 to 1950 because that's what I was
I
allowed to watch,
I
which were
wow.
sometimes way more like provocative and like, adult than, like just
Yeah.
watching the kids stuff.
Yeah, and I think also it's shaped so much of your personality and also your sense of style, most
Oh,
likely. I think your
I
dresses are
mean,
impacted by that in the best way.
everything that I do is impacted by watching all of those old Hollywood films, and that could be a whole like episode in and of itself about classic Hollywood adaptations, and because so much had to be left out of books because
Yeah.
of the studio system, but then the code that people had to follow about what was allowed to be included and not included, and so a lot of the subtext is of books is, or even the text of books
Yeah.
became subtext. And so I think that's a really interesting conversation to be had another time.
Well, there's a lot more conversations for us to have, David. I can't wait for all of them.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
And there you have it, another episode of Inside the Design Studio and the Books. If you enjoyed this exploration of life's design, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And hey, if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review. Your thoughts fuel our creative journey. I'm David Peck, your design companion on this adventure. Until next time, keep crafting a life that's as captivating as your favorite masterpiece.